on this computer. Okay, we are getting started now.
Right.
So let me just give a quick introduction. Paul Corrigan, who is a master business broker and business appraiser, actually, and he works for Transworld. And Paul's going to teach all about the best way to write a confidential business summary, otherwise known as, well, he's going to tell you about all the different names of it. And take it away, Paul Corrigan. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate it.
Peter, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate everyone attending today. I just thought it might be important to talk a bit about what I think is one of our most important documents. I call it the CBS here, Confidential Business Summary, but CBR, CIM, deal book, marketing materials, all kinds of different names for this, but you probably all do it. You all put everything together. And I just want to present some ideas here. I'll show you how I do mine. I'm certainly not saying mine is the be all, then the best in the world. It is by no means that. And I welcome people participating and giving other things you may be including in what you're doing. But this is something I've always tried to concentrate on, because it really is your one chance to make a life-changing impression. You're making someone a buyer, and you're maybe retiring someone else. So, what is the confidential business summary? It's a document that we all put together to help sell a particular business after an NDA is signed, so it's confidential. But it basically has a particular purpose. I just want to touch on the audience that it might reach out to, what some of the content is, what are some design features that you may want to kind of work in there and think about, and just some other factors as well when you put one together. So this is my purpose for a CBS, to provide enough information in such a format that a buyer can determine in less than 45 minutes whether or not to pursue this opportunity. So to me, it's, you want to give them, because in my view, the earliest no, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit, and you're not going to be able to force it down anybody's throat. So give them as much information as you can in a format that anybody can take a look at, and make a decision about whether they like this opportunity enough to continue on. And then we've jumped over, hopefully, a lot of we've addressed maybe a lot of negative factors, and they go, nope, that's not a deal breaker. So who is the potential audience for this document that you might be putting together? Obviously, it's buyers. If you're representing the seller, you put together the document mainly to attract buyers. But you also may want to be able to give this to different financial institutions to find out how financeable in this deal. And I'll talk a bit more about that in the financial section. CPAs, attorneys, financial planners, all these people may be wanting to take a look at this document to just learn more about the business, and you want to bring them up to speed as quickly as possible. You're saving everybody money. The quicker you can convey the information, the quicker the other professionals can absorb it and support your client appropriately. So I want to talk a bit about the content, at least the content that I think is critical. That would be the company history and background. We're going to go into these in details. Financials, what I call the seller disclosure form, and I'll show you that. Any supporting documentation, could be things like equipment lists or descriptions of patents or other processes or client types. Notes and frequently asked questions. This is where it becomes a living document. I'll go over that. I always like to include a, sorry, I should go back there, an offer to purchase, and we'll go over that. And then obviously, how do you get in touch with me? So the content that I want to, that I generally like to talk about is the general history of the business. What is the story of the business? And here's where I think you really want to maybe expound a little bit. What are some of the highlights and some of the challenges that maybe the business has had? What licenses do you need, barriers to entry? Obviously management and employees. What products, services, who is their competition, where do they grow. You want to be able to, again, address all the things that a buyer is going to be worrying about right up front. So, yep, we thought about that. This is who it is. Here's how we compete with them. And what are the opportunities for growth? The location, specifics about building, leases, environmental conditions. And then people also like to see equipment list, and fixed assets. So I'm going to jump now and jump into an actual CBS that I use. Can you all still see that? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
So I'm just showing you now a confidential business summary that I put together for a transaction that recently happened. Mine are typically between 15 and this one's actually fairly long because it grew quite a bit to 20 pages. So again, I like to put in the table of contents. I want this to be very professional and have the ability for people to jump to a particular section very quickly. I start off with a history, and this is an actual company. The names have been omitted till their non-extradition papers clear. This is an actual company very involved with certifications and needed specific certifications, what their history was there. And I have then just basic nuts and bolts type information. And a lot of times my master template, everything you see in bold is in my master template. Then I just fill in everything else after it. I don't like writing this stuff. I really put it off. So that's why I've broken it up into different sections that I can talk about. And these are just, like I say, these are reminders in my master template. Do I need, and some of these things you don't need to talk about. You may not have any employees, so employee turnover is not an issue. You may not have, you may need to talk about product. You may need to talk about service. You need to talk about, what are they producing? I like to intersperse a lot of pictures. The more photographs you get, the more people get to feel at home with it. I cover all kinds of, small stuff just so people know that this issue has been addressed, or it's something that they may want to think about. And I actually think that's a good thing, making people maybe come up with issues they hadn't thought about. And you go, hey, maybe working with this broker is a good thing because he's already thought about this issue. Again, this company was RIOS certified. It's a certification that's very difficult to get. They have annual on-site reviews, so they're very proud of that. And that's one of the ways they distinguish themselves from their competition. So you want to highlight that. Employee turnover, and again, I just have these master headings, and then I can sit down and say, oh, I don't want to write 100 sentences, but you know what? I've broken it down, so I don't need to write more than 5 sentences at a time. I can just do this section and then move on. And if I want to, I can come back to it. That's just my style. Again, these are just other descriptions when I'm talking about the business. You may need to talk about your percentage of revenue by different client types or by geography. Again, obviously every business has been different. That's why we love this business. I talk about growth opportunities, direct competitors, who their main vendors are. Do they have strategic vendor relationships? What are the barriers to entry? Why is this a good business to be into, or why is this a good business to purchase rather than start from scratch? Because it may be very difficult to get into this business. What are the strengths of the businesses? And what are some of the challenges? I could typically have a section on real estate, whether it's owned or leased. And again, I like to put the things as clear cut forward as possible. So again, people can, hey, does this fit in my budget? Am I trying to bite off more than I can chew here? Or maybe this isn't the size business I need. Typically, I want to ask for environmental questions, lease options. And then in this case, again, I love using different photographs, different images. This is an image of their warehouse. You could eat off the floor in this place. It was so clean. And then I actually had a floor plan because a lot of people that were actually involved in this deal were, equipment warehousing experts. They knew the processes for moving goods through a warehouse. So there was and they had this space custom built out for the sellers had the space custom built out for them. So that's part of the basic information that I like to include in there. Again, I think my master template probably has more sections than this. So again, I just add and delete what I need and don't need, but it serves as a reminder to me what I need to be looking for and what asking. And a lot of times I come up with my own questions just as I'm starting to do this. And that's a good chance, again, to speak to the seller. I believe in putting together very strong, clear financials. I'm a business valuator, so I like to get 3 years of tax returns. I input it into Excel. I have these linked to Excel. For those of you who are not familiar with linking documents, I don't want to go into it here, but certainly happy to walk through that with anyone that might be interested. But these are and I state right where they come from. Is it from tax returns, cash basis, accounting basis? I want all this to be very, very clear. And again, because I will send this to banks and say, banks, how do you like this deal? How much would you finance it for? Can you give me a pre-screening on your loan potential business?
Hey, Paul?
And, yes.
Can you expand that window so we can read it a little bit better?
Make it bigger.
Yeah, the window that you're scrolling to, if you can, or even just expand the size of the window itself, the full window.
No, I'm sorry.
That's better. That's much better right there.
Yeah, this is as big as my screen gets. So again, these are just standard balance sheets. I get the information usually off of tax returns. But again, I am always very accurate because those in the banking industry that have worked with me know that the numbers I show here, these are the numbers that are on the tax return. Obviously, they got to do their due diligence and get their 4506Ts from the IRS, but they know at least here they can give a good pre-screening opinion of what they think this might be able to be financed for. So I put together a balance sheet, profit and loss statement here. And again, I link all this to an Excel spreadsheet, but again, you can just cut and paste pictures or whatever you have in. I then do standard add backs. I give an explanation for all of my add backs, why they are what they are. And I just have a numbering system. But you always want to give a reason as to why you're adding something back and in more detail in certain cases. So this, obviously produces your SD and your EBITDA. I give people the standard EBITDAs and projected EBITDAs. Again, the reasons why. So that's the basis for the financial section. And so that's usually pretty much cut and dried. Then I have a section that I think is very important. I call it the seller's disclosure. And it's a list of about 50 questions on business conditions, on regulations that the business may be responsible to or for, and then any legal considerations. And this is, this is what I use as a great tool for sitting down with a seller and asking them these questions. Or I can send it to I can actually make this a document that I can send to my seller and say, please fill out this form. And they can actually go down and it's a form protected document. But this is very useful because it triggers the seller. A lot of times you tend to forget the bad things in life. We've all been through those embarrassing moments and we don't want to remember them, so we tend to forget them. And this sometimes reminds a seller, oh yeah, I did have a lawsuit 5 years ago, but we resolved it. It was a trivial, wrongful, termination suit. So this is a great tool for that. For them to sort of get reminded of things that have happened in the past. It's a great tool for me to sort of make sure I ask all these questions. And again, I want to know about any dead bodies buried in the basement before my buyer finds out about them. So I want to make sure I'm asking every question that I can. Regulations, again, it's just a clue. I had a case where I had it was a car wash, and the guy answered no to all these questions. And then it turns out he had some EPA issues, and he goes, I thought my environmental attorney took care of all that. And I went, excuse me, you have an environmental attorney and you didn't tell me about these past issues? So that's not something you want to find out halfway through a negotiation process. At least I didn't enjoy it. Any questions that answer yes, and what I actually tell people is every answer should be no. It's okay if it's not. You explain what the issue was down here. But I always say, but you can't just make everything no, because I said I always have one question in there that should be a yes. So you got to make sure they read the entire document, or I go over it with them in person. So that's the seller's disclosure list. Again, I have my sellers sign this. When this document's completed, there's a signature page. So my seller signs it, and then I have my buyer sign it when they receive it. Again, after the seller's disclosure, I have just other items that may be of interest. In this case, it was major equipment, a lot of trucks, condition, status, who's the lessor, when does the list expire, when is it completed. Those are questions that come up a lot, and you knew they would. Then I have a notes, comments, and frequently asked questions section. And this is the living part of the document, because every time I had a potential buyer come in with a list of questions, I would put them here. If I knew the answer, I'd complete it. I'd go to the seller, I would get the answer and add it to this document. So the next time it went out, it had all the updated, had all the latest questions, because I don't want to go back and be asking my seller the same questions over and over again. And periodically, I would resend this updated document to all my interested buyers just to make sure they had all the latest information that was available. A lot of inquiries in this particular package here. And then finally, what I always like to include is an offer to purchase. Let's show them how simple it can be to lock this deal up. And so it's I call it a LOI, or letter of I commit to nothing. But it has due diligence. And again, if you send this out as a protected Word document, they can add and make changes to their offer. And I've had people do this, fill this out right in front of me and says, okay, let's get the offer in. So I like to show them how simple it can be. Obviously, speak to your attorney or whoever else if you want to make this thing available. And then at the end, of course, there's just how to get in touch with me. So that's really the nuts and bolts of my what my CBS looks like. We talked a bit about the financials. I talked about the seller's non-disclosure, the three sections in there. Obviously, you can build your own. They're probably a lot. And again, that's a great place to ask those questions that come up, because that's when things will show up as well.
Paul, do you have a disclaimer in there anywhere?
It's in the on the signature pages that the buyer and the seller sign. So when they sign there, they're realizing that there's a disclaimer there. This is just from management.
Right.
Equipment, again, some of the things you may want in your supporting documentation, equipment list, product service list. If you have special, like I said, I actually have a listing now that has 2 patents, so I have to describe the patents and the patent numbers and expiration dates and all that. You may want to include Client list, obviously, you've got to be concerned about confidentiality. So it's client A, client B, and maybe you just show the dollar amounts or just the percentage, of total revenue that particular clients are. I have a little separate spreadsheet I put together that allows the client to put in, hey, just give me your top 10. And I can send that off to, potential buyers as well. And they can kind of sort and go through it. But obviously confidentiality is important. And then any other details that may go in there. Frequently asked questions. Again, I call this a living document. I use it to amass knowledge about the business because every buyer tends to look at a business in a different way. Eliminates the need to resupply answers. There's, I always say there might be some potential danger of opening up a can of worms to other buyers. One buyer may be very focused on how the company's marketed. The other company, another buyer is very interested in operations. And all of a sudden you start talking about marketing and the operations guy may go, I didn't even think about marketing. Maybe this is a bigger deal than I want. But again, I kind of always think that the more transparent you are, the better. Again, it shows that I, as the broker, have been thinking about it. And again, I can be a resource to you, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, to help transition this thing through. Use fonts in different colors. Again, you've probably noticed in my questionnaire, I have answers in red, questions in black, just to make it easy to see. The offer to purchase, again, simple one-page document. I can send it as a PDF, or I can send it as an editable document like you saw. Again, they can just edit the form fields. And then I apply a spot where they can put in additional contingencies or whatever. But it does say that there needs to be a date and time specification. So again, we're trying to create maybe a sense of urgency. But it's non-binding, but it's now at least it's something in writing that people can talk about. Just a quick notes on design. Again, I have a master template I use. So if you're going to do something on a consistent scale or consistent look, obviously a template's a great idea. I try and make it easily reproducible. Everything fits on 8.5 by 11. Can easily be printed. And I like it having in a format that, I will paginate it so that, I don't have to worry about the spacing. Different sections always come up at the top of a page and so on. Pictures, I think, are very important. Again, you don't want any people or anything that, violates privacy, intentions. And I like to use a wide variety, like flow charts or floor plans, or like I said, certification. Sometimes it might be licenses, serving licenses, and things like that. And then I just wanted to wrap up on things that you also want to consider is the protection. How are you sending this document out? Is it a PDF? You can fill in a form. Is it a Word document? The attorneys may need to make changes on it. And then I would follow up with my own contact info at the back. And then that's good call on the disclaimers. Make sure you have the legal advice and your disclaimers are on what I have my signature page. So that's a wrap for me.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
How do you deal with capital expenditure? Do you deduct that from EBITDA, or do you state it separately in your CBM what a possible expectation of CapEx is?
I mean, I certainly can. And when I do valuations, I certainly do that. There are actually databases you can go and you can get and you can base it on depreciation. In other words, based on the depreciation the company's spending, the retail industry spends about 132% on CapEx compared with average annual depreciation. And like I said, you can get the average in the country is 122.1 actually, if you want to be a nerd about it like me. So again, just think about it. You bought a truck 5 years ago, you're going to replace that with a more expensive truck just due to inflation and probably better product. So that's a way I can do forward-looking CapEx on a fairly simple basis.
But if you have repairs and maintenance is also a substitute for CapEx. So if somebody is fixing it up instead of replacing it, they're paying that maintenance expense.
Right.
And that maintenance expense would be there. So if you have both the maintenance expense and the CapEx, you're kind of doubling that expense.
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean, I usually recommend people to set, this is when you CapEx something, this is when you can treat it as an expense. And maybe it's $5,000, anything less than 5,000 is just sort of, and again, it depends on the size of the company.
Yeah.
For me, it would be $50, but no. But you just set a limit there because it's not worth, depreciating a $2,200 piece of equipment when you've got 10 million in, assets, depreciable equipment.
Paul, what do you do as far as having the your CBR? I call it CBR. What do you do as far as having the CBR approved by the seller before you distribute it to buyers? You get.
So that's what I said. I have a signature page. So at the back of the document, I didn't show it, but at the back of the document, there's a signature page, for the seller to sign saying, I agree with everything in here. It's true. As far as I know. And actually at the bottom of that, I actually have a buyer. So you're saying you've received it and you understand this information is, supplied by a third party.
That's really important to me because they're going up to buyers, you got to make sure if there's something that turns out is wrong in that CBR and the seller didn't approve it, well, later on they could say, hey, I didn't say that. The broker said that. Right?
Oh, I always have, I always have my seller sign. Absolutely.
Always.
Yeah. It's not going anywhere if you haven't approved it.
Good.
So what about, I thought it was genius. I loved it. The question and answer section, because that one saves a lot of time between you and the seller asking the same question and them thinking you're an idiot. But beyond that, on this disclosure, if that's a live and document, every time you make a change for that, how do you deal with the seller sign off on that?
Oh, when we're adding things to the,
Yes.
I mean, I don't have them re-sign. I just send them a copy saying, here are the answers I'm giving.
Yep.
And I'll just please respond with an email. You approve. I don't get that. I mean, I've never had an issue, but you do want to make sure that the seller understands the seriousness of this.
Well, on your example, you had 32, so I imagine that was a lot of questions and that'd be a lot of emails. I suppose one buyer could have asked a half dozen of those, I suppose.
Oh, yes. A lot of them were the same buyer. And like I said, some of them I knew the answers, so I didn't need to go back to the seller. But the other ones I would either get the answer from them or, tell the buyer we don't have an answer. But that does save a lot of time because buyers ask a lot of questions, smart questions. At least I find they do. And I'll forget the answers if I don't have it written somewhere.
How do you finesse the buyers who said, gee, I'm happy to see your information, but I want to meet the seller and do my own due diligence on the seller? Do you say you have to complete an LOI before you get to meet the client?
No, not at all. I just say, here's how easy it is to do an LOI to lock this up. And after, I mean, I've had, so next step, I always say, here's the document. If you're interested, if you like what you see at the end of my document, fill out a question, put down in one email all your questions, because I'm not going to pepper the buyer, the seller with 2 questions every other day that you happen to think of. Send it to me in email. I'll get those questions answered. I'll usually put them in the document, add it for the next buyer. And then if you're interested from that point, I usually say, now it's time for a meeting. But at any point along there, I say, you know what, if this really is attractive to you, let's get this thing locked down. Here's how easy it is. Here's the things the basic things you need to think about.
Do you find putting a BizMiner report in, have you ever done that? Usually I like to do that so that they can see what the industry is doing. So I'll add that to my CBR at the end. And then I show comparisons of percentages of STE and see how that business would stack up to the industry. Do you sometimes add that to your CBM or CBR or CBS or whatever you want to call it?
I've never done that. I think that's a great idea. When I do evaluations, I almost always have those kind of appendices in there. But that's a great idea actually, because I do have access to those industry reports. It gives you, so now you can, and you'll notice, I think in my financial section, I have percentage of, each line item has a percentage of revenue, let's say. Well, those additional reports give you those industry-wide averages, so you can compare how's this business doing to what the industry's doing.
Yeah, I found that to be really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a high, again, I this CBM, it's your chance to put the sizzle on the steak. You want to make this, you want to be as honest and transparent as possible. Again, my belief, but and it's a great point, Joe. If I know that their cost of goods are 10% less than the industry average, boy, I'm going to toot that horn, because I want to show all the strength. I want to show all the strengths I can in the business.
I have a question on the legal aspects. So maybe if there's an attorney, I see John's on the call, can comment on this. So the offer to purchase, including the template there or providing the template as a broker to the buyer, what does an attorney feel about that? Is that a good idea? Does that give the buyer an opportunity in the future to say that I didn't know what I was getting into because the broker provided me with the offer template and I just filled it, signed it. It was not my offer. I didn't get legal advice, blah, blah, blah. So, I've always been on the fence on this. John, what's your view on it? Does that create any risk from a broker's perspective?
I don't know. Is John listening right now? He may have walked away for a minute. I would just say, I'm not a lawyer, but I would just say that, as brokers, we cannot create third-party agreements, right? That's the thing that a broker cannot do that a lawyer can do. So you cannot draft an agreement and then ask a buyer and seller to sign it. You've violated the law. You can get in trouble for that. So if you are going to give someone an offer document, and I do that, my document has been reviewed by an attorney. So I think you can use a standard form offer document that's been reviewed by an attorney and keep that sort of, attorney's opinion saying, yeah, this looks like I'm not sure exactly what they would say, but it should be reviewed by an attorney. Otherwise, you should not create third-party agreements. And I draft purchase and sale agreements for my deals, but it's always with the permission of the seller's attorney, and the seller's attorney, I require, reviews my agreement, makes any changes before giving it to a buyer. So I've gone through an attorney. So never create third-party documents on your own. At least that's Massachusetts law. I can't guarantee how it works in every state.
Yeah, and the offer template says at the end that it's a binding agreement. So
says it's not a binding agreement. Yeah, and it says in there, I'm aware I should be going to an attorney.
I think you can also add language that says, I'm not sure what yours says, sorry, Paul, but you can say the buyer and seller agree to have this document reviewed by their attorney before signing it, or something like that. Basically putting a burden on them to have it reviewed by an attorney as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always been a gray area.
I think you just have the document reviewed by an attorney. That's without an attorney giving us another piece of advice. I think that's what you do. Have an attorney look at it and say, yeah, that's a document.
Mhm. Thanks, Paul. This was great.
Oh,
I got a question. So Paul, of all the things that your CBR is supposed to accomplish, what's the number one thing you would say?
I think it gets down to how quickly can I get a decision made by the reader. I want to know if that buyer is
Paul, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if everybody else is getting that, but you're breaking up here.
I was just saying I want it to be a document where the reader can come to a decision very quickly about it. Do they
Yes.
like this opportunity or not?
Do you like it or not? Is this for you or not? If it isn't, that's fine. Have a nice life.
That could be a bank, that could be a CPA. I mean, it's not just the buyer, it's anybody else who looks at this.
Okay, good. Any other questions? All right, Paul.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead,
Paul?
John.
yeah, just curious, I may have missed this, but did you say that you were gonna make this slide deck available or do you have a template that you use for this?
I can certainly, I mean, I'm happy to send out like a PDF version of my document. Yeah, I'm certainly at the slideshow is certainly I'll make available. I'll send that to Peter.
Great, thank you.
Good. Okay. So, Paul, thank you very much for doing this. I know it takes a lot of time out of your day and you spent some time on doing this and we appreciate it. You're really helping NEBBA. And as a quick reminder to everyone here, again, please remember to renew your NEBBA membership. There'll be more reminders coming via email this month. And we appreciate your membership and we will be continuing to do these meetings. By the way, just as a reminder too, we made November and December open to everyone. In other words, you didn't have to be a NEBBA member, but prior to then, all these meetings were for NEBBA eyes only. And when we go into next year, again, it's going to revert back to NEBBA only. So to participate in these meetings, we do expect you to be a paid member of NEBBA. And like I said, we appreciate your membership, but there has to be some sort of value that's specific to those that re-up their memberships. And we really appreciate that you do that. Okay. If that's it, I guess we're going to say goodbye. Again, thank you everyone for attending our December meeting and happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Kwanzaa. Don't forget about Kwanzaa.
Kwanzaa. Oh, and by the way, I just want to say to Kwanzaa, thank you. By the way, before you go, I'm going to tell you when the annual meeting is. This is a big meeting. It's next month. I think it's on the 14th, but you'll get a notice about that. And we're going to have an economist on and talking to us about the future of the economy, especially with the change in presidential administration. And so please join us for the January meeting and please renew your membership. We really appreciate it.
Is it virtual?
It will be virtual, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. And
Okay.
thank you, Paul.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
See you later.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
job,
Bye.
guys. Thanks.